Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. On today's episode when we talk about 7 things, I'm going to be going over Outback Trial by Fire from the newest season of Last One Standing. Before I continue, check out the links below. I would highly recommend the Castaway survey link where you can vote for a survivalist who you'd like to see be on a Castaways challenge. It unfortunately requires a Google sign-in, but feel free to share with your friends and advocate for who you would like to see return for Castaways challenge. So we are on episode 1, and the episode does feel a little bit stretched out. The first few minutes are a bunch of scenes we've seen in the sneak peek and the trailers and whatnot. We hear that 5 survivors in the last week have been taken out, and Matt is the one who says that. And we learn that the competition is 1 month long as opposed to 45 days. We are in the Australian outback with hot days and cold nights, and I think that the prize money should be increased at least to $150,000 and then maybe $200,000 and then $250,000. And I also think that there should be opportunities for other monetary prizes throughout the season that would be significantly less than the prize money, but just a little bit more incentive to the survivalists where they can win a couple $1,000s here and there. And we hear Kai mention she had major surgery 5 weeks before the challenge, which I am very worried about. The survivalists are given their first challenge after sizing up their competition, and I wonder how long it took to film this and how many times they had to walk back, but who knows. And the setup is very Hunger Games to start out because everyone's in a circle, and I'm surprised there wasn't a cornucopia in the middle, but they are told that they have to start a fire and transport said fire to a pyre in the middle of a river, and they're only given a ferro rod, so they have to find a piece of basalt and start a fire and get it to the pyre. And the group is split up into men and women, and the first and second placers will be given the option of getting a bow and arrows or a fishing asset, and then the bottom two of each group will be up for elimination, where on day 2 they will have an elimination challenge, and the winner gets to stay in the competition and the loser will go home. And the challenge begins and the group split up and everyone starts trying to make their fire. Jamie is the first to get his fire, then Patrick, but Patrick is able to get his flotation vessel ready first, and so he is the first person to complete the challenge for the men, and he picks the bows and arrows. And Kayla H is the first woman to get a fire, and Laura is the second, and then Jamie gets his flotation vessel prepared and completes the challenge. Matt goes to transport his fire, and so does Darren. Matt's fire goes out before he can light his fire and has to start over. Darren needs to relight his fire. Max goes to set his fire on fire, and then Darren goes back into the river after getting his fire relit. And then Cheenie's fire is too big, so she has to get the flame a little bit smaller so she can transport it better. Trish mentions being the first woman to complete the first challenge on season 2, so I wonder if that's foreshadowing where it doesn't really end well for her for this challenge. And then Cheenie gets her pyre on fire. Kai gets fire and goes to her pyre, and unfortunately Kayla C and Trish are the bottom 2 for the women. And then for the men, Max and Darren get their pyres on fire, and so Jermaine, Matt, and Trent are trying their best to get their pyre on fire, and it's a little bit of a nail biter. And Matt tries to get to the water with a big fire and accidentally burns his thumb, and his skin is blistering. And then Jermaine has a coal and is trying to set his pyre on fire, and then Matt gets up to his pyre but isn't able to transfer the fire, and then Trent is able to get his fire into the water, but Jermaine gets his fire lit and is the 5th place finisher, and Matt and Trent will be up for elimination on day 2. Now, the final placings for the men were Patrick was first and picked the bow and arrows, and then Jamie was second and got the fishing kit. Then Max, Darren, and Jermaine were 3rd, 4th, and 5th, with Matt and Trent ending up in the bottom 2. And for the women, Kayla H was first and picked the fishing kit. Laura got the bows and arrows, and she was second, followed by Suzanne, Cheenie, and Kai, who were safe, and then Kayla C and Trish were 6th and 7th, so they are up for elimination and will face off against each other on day 2. Now, the remaining 10 are split up into camps. They are told that they can't share any earned assets unless they're in the same camp, and they can trade for their items, but sharing with different camps is not allowed. Zone 1 is a winding river with fishing opportunities, but there are lots of taipans and saltwater crocodiles. Survivalists have 2 hours to build a camp, and at each camp there are kukri blades for everybody, hides for everybody, and a single pot. And the groups end up being Patrick, Chini, and Jermaine, Kayla H, Kai, and Darren, Suzanne and Jamie, and finally Max and Laura. And basically, I wanted to point out that there are some behind the scenes photo that kind of reveals who stays in the competition between Matt and Trent and Kayla C and Trish. So I think everybody at this point knows, but the episode was still very tense, and it's like, oh, I know what's going on, but I'm still like, oh, who's gonna win? How's it gonna happen? Oh my gosh. So it's still a fun watch. And then Kayla C, Trish, Trent, and Matt make their camp in the desolate scrublands. Matt has his burn looked at, and it could be a third-degree burn. Jamie and Suzanne have a funny interaction because she doesn't understand his accent. Jamie was a little sneaky and held on to the items when Suzanne got there and was like, oh, here, I'll let you have these items because I found 2 machetes and there are 2 pelts, so I'll just let you have one. And he is basically playing a mental game where he wants to get Suzanne on his side so she'll help him out potentially in the future. And, he wants to have the hearts and minds. He talks about that a lot. And so it's interesting to see his mental game. I think he and Patrick kind of have a mental game going on. And it was a little bit funny to see Suzanne not being able to understand Jamie's accent. He's like, did you find any items? And she's like, what? And he's like, did you find any items? And she's like, oh, no, I did not. So it was very interesting. And then everyone prepares for the first night. And I noticed Matt getting a lot of confessionals this episode. So I think that maybe he will win, or they're just trying to get all his confessionals now before he goes home. And you can see kind of the storylines being built throughout. And we get a few confessionals from Trish, followed by Trent and Kayla C. So I think that might be a little bit of an indicator of what's to come. And day 2, and Chini, Jermaine, and Patrick make a wiki up shelter. The bottom 4 get ready for their elimination challenge, but we must build the anticipation, so they're not going to do their challenge yet. Kayla H talks about her lack of experience compared to Kai and Darren, and we see Andrew and Cole leaving her in XL10, and she was alone for 14 days and persevered, and she even caught a caiman, and they're kind of building up her underdog storyline. And so she finds some freshwater clams and begins fishing, and Jamie also goes fishing with the grasshopper as bait. And Jamie spots Suzanne's pelt outside the survival area and mentions that if any items are outside the survival area, then people can steal it. And then Jamie starts thinking of his psychological game, and how later on he mentions to Suzanne, like, oh, Patrick was coming around and he saw that the pelt was outside the survival area, so I put it back in so he couldn't steal it. And Suzanne gives him a hug and he makes a face at the camera. So I think that he's going a little too much too soon. I think that he could have given her the items right away when she got to camp, and then did the little trick with the pelt thing, saying, oh, Patrick was going to steal it, to get her on his side. But I find it entertaining. People online were not liking it, but I enjoyed it. It's a competition, and people don't have to play nice, even though you may not agree with it. But, let's support the survivalists. Do not send hate to anyone. Support your faves. And so Jamie catches a fish, and there's sort of a storyline building of Patrick and Jamie being rivals because Patrick got first in the challenge and Jamie got second. So I wonder how far this storyline will go. And then Patrick says he wants to sow fear and doubt. Jamie is convincing Suzanne he's helping her out more than he is. And spoiler alert, there was a sneak peek during the hour-long sneak peek where Patrick does indeed steal Jamie's fishing line. So that was very unfortunate. It looks like Patrick was able to one-up Jamie, and I don't know how well Jamie will do in the season. I'm worried because it looks like he falls victim to heat exhaustion, so that's not good. And then we go to Laura, who's out hunting, who talks about how this is her first time getting bow and arrows on challenges. And Kayla H gets a really big fish for her, Darren, and Kai. And also later on, Kai, Kayla H, and Darren are told that there are a lot of taipans in the area around their camp. And snakes are protected in Australia, so hunting them is a no-no. They are protected. And then we go back to the bottom 4. Matt's burn really blistered, and he talks about the only reason he ever left in the past was mainly due to injury because he got a flesh-eating bacteria on XL3 and he tore a calf muscle on Last One Standing Season 1, and those were the factors that caused him to leave those challenges. And he is ready and willing to fight, and he will fight through the pain, and he wants to win. And he gets his bandages changed on his hand, and the bottom four get a scroll, and the men and women split up and will face off. And to secure their spot, they must make a controlled burn. The winner stays and the loser goes home. They gather materials to make a fire, and the episode ends. So I think that was a good episode. We're going to see which two individuals are getting eliminated next week. And I think that based on what we're seeing, that Matt, Kayla H, and Patrick and Jamie are getting the storylines right now. Matt is him kind of finding his way back from the bottom two and redeeming himself from Last One Standing Season 1. Kayla H, she talks about being the underdog, and even though she has a lot less experience than her legendary counterparts, she's still doing really well. She got first on the first challenge, and she managed to catch a big fish, so she's feeding her team. And we're getting a lot from Patrick and Jamie and their mind games that they're playing and their little rivalry that they're having, so that's very interesting to watch. And they're getting their screen time, so that's good. And people online, at least on the True Fans page, are talking a lot about Matt, Patrick, and Jamie, so I think that at least Patrick and Jamie know what they're doing in terms of getting talked about by the audience. Matt is just being himself and is getting a lot of confessionals and stuff, and people think that Matt is overrated, but he is incredibly talented and is one of the best survivalists of the franchise. And although Jamie seems to be doing a little bit too much with the psychological game, at least it's getting people talking. So I really hope that he can come back for another challenge, maybe an XL or something. And we have seen Jamie in the past be a really good team player, because on his first challenge with the USA versus World, he was doing everything he can to try to help his partner be able to drink the water, but she ended up tapping. And then later when he merged with Jessie and her partner, Jessie and Jamie's new partner had vertigo during their migration, and they were boiling water to try to help him out, but eventually he tapped, unfortunately. And then he was on solo and he fought through a lot there. So I think he's very tough, and I think that he should come back for more challenges. Maybe wait until another LOS if he does get eliminated or mid-tap during the season. And then Patrick, I think, is a little bit too campy with his "I'm the villain," and there's a point where he's kind of shoulders hunched and clenching his fist before the start of the first challenge. So I think it's a little bit too much, but I mean, he's getting people talking. And unfortunately, Discovery hasn't put out the updated PSRs. We only hear about 3 individuals' PSRs changing, and we see Kayla H, her PSR goes from an 8.0 to an 8.3 after getting first place in the challenge and getting a fish. Patrick's PSR jumps from 8.9 to 9.1 after getting first place in the challenge. And unfortunately, Matt's PSR drops from 9.7 to 9.4 after being the bottom 2 the first challenge and for burning himself. And with that, that is the end of the recap. Thank you all so much for listening. Please like, comment nice things, and subscribe. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you stay for the last bit, I will tell you who I think will be the final 3 for the season. Okay, if you don't want to know, then click off now. Okay, I think based on the commercials and individuals who we see jumping into a lake and trying to start a fire next to the lake or river with, a wood structure where it's, I think, 3 logs leaning against each other. But you know what I mean? I think that Chini, Darren, and Matt will be the final 3. Also, we haven't gotten the headshots of the survivalists that they usually have at the beginning of the season. And as I said, we don't have the PSRs. But hopefully we can get the updated PSRs and the headshots soon. But we shall see. And with that, thank you so much. Bye-bye.